The palace of Zithra was more magnificent than any human could imagine. Towers of shining crystal stretched high into the sky, reflecting the twin suns that bathed the city in golden light. Gardens floated above wide courtyards, and rivers of liquid light curved gracefully around sculpted bridges. To most, it was the height of elegance and order, but for Princess Lysera it was home, and sometimes it felt like a gilded cage. Lysera stood near the grand balcony of her private chambers, gazing at the horizon. Her long silver hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her deep violet eyes reflected both the beauty of her world and the weight of her responsibilities. The princess was young, but she carried herself with a grace and wisdom beyond her years. Every movement, every gesture was precise, as if her body knew the rules of her world better than her mind sometimes did. Yet today, she felt a strange unease. A message had arrived early this morning. A human envoy was on Zithra. Humans were not forbidden, but they were unusual visitors. Most Zithrans regarded them as fragile, unpredictable, and often beneath serious consideration. Lysera had met humans before many years ago, but she had barely remembered them. Humans were small, their appearance simple compared to Zithran elegance, and their emotions, so raw, were sometimes hard for her kind to understand. "Princess," said her aide, a tall Zithran named Velrin, stepping lightly onto the balcony. His voice was calm but respectful. "The human envoy has arrived. He requests an audience with you." Lysera nodded, turning her eyes toward the distant landing platform where a small shuttle hovered. Its design was simple, metallic, and completely unremarkable compared to Zithran technology. And yet, as the shuttle doors opened, Lysera felt her breath catch. The human stepped out. He was tall by human standards, but ordinary next to the Zithrans. His brown hair was slightly messy, and his eyes, bright green, looked alert and kind. He moved with confidence, but not arrogance. There was something about him that seemed familiar. Lysera's heart skipped. She didn't know why, but her mind stirred with a memory she could not fully grasp. She shook it away. "It is impossible," she told herself. "I have only seen humans as a child. How could I possibly recognize one now?" The human approached her, bowing slightly, not as deep as a Zithran bow, but polite and respectful. "Princess Lysera," he said, his voice calm with a hint of warmth. "I am Ethan from Earth. I have come to discuss the matters of interstellar alliance and trade." Lysera studied him carefully. His presence seemed to radiate confidence without pride. There was a kindness in his eyes, a courage in the way he held himself. Something inside her stirred a memory, a feeling she could not place. "Welcome to Zithra, Ethan of Earth," she said, her voice steady, but her mind raced. "Your people are welcome, though you are far from your home." Ethan nodded, a slight smile crossing his face. "Thank you, Princess. I have long admired Zithra, and I hope my presence is not unwelcome." Velrin glanced at Lysera, sensing her hesitation. "Princess," he said softly, "perhaps you should meet him in the hall. The council will be waiting." Lysera turned back to the shuttle, her eyes locking on Ethan for just a moment longer. That moment felt like a spark in the dark, fleeting but impossible to ignore. The palace hall was vast, with ceilings that seemed to touch the sky. Light flowed from crystalline chandeliers, casting rainbows across polished floors. The council of Zithra awaited, seated in their ornate chairs, their eyes curious but cautious. Lysera entered with measured steps, and Ethan followed, keeping pace with calm composure. The council murmured among themselves. Humans were known, but rarely did one arrive personally, and fewer still carried themselves with such quiet confidence. "Princess Lysera," said the council leader, an elder named Tharan, his voice deep and commanding. "You have invited this human for a reason. Speak." Lysera's eyes flicked to Ethan briefly and then back to the council. "He comes with information and proposals," she said, "but his presence is more personal than that. He has experience with Zithra, experience that might surprise us all." The council's interest piqued. "Experience with Zithra?" Humans rarely left an impression on anyone here, let alone on the princess herself. Ethan stepped forward. "Honorable council," he said, "I do not come with arrogance nor with grand promises, but I have been to Zithra before. Years ago I was fortunate enough to save the life of someone very important." He paused, and Lysera felt her pulse quicken. "Could it be?" He continued, carefully choosing his words. "I was a young man, and the circumstances were dangerous. I risked everything because it was the right thing to do. I never thought I would meet her again. Lysera's breath caught. Memories flashed, distant, blurred, yet vivid. A day long ago, she had been trapped in a sudden storm, the ground giving way beneath her small legs. A human had appeared out of nowhere, strong and fearless, carrying her to safety. She had thanked him then, but as a child the memory had faded over time. Now, standing before her, was the man who had once saved her life. Her heart raced, and for a moment she struggled to maintain her composure. Ethan's eyes met hers, and he gave a small, respectful nod. "I did what I could," he said softly. "I never expected to see you again, Princess." Lysera's hand trembled slightly, but she lifted her chin, regaining her royal poise. You saved me," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Her voice was barely audible, but the words carried the weight of long-buried gratitude. The council shifted, sensing the tension but unsure of its cause. Lysera had always been composed, but now there was a vulnerability in her demeanor, a human-like response that no one had seen before. Ethan took a small step forward, careful not to crowd her. "Yes, Princess," he said, "and I would do it again. Humans, we value life. We believe in doing what is right even when it is difficult." Lysera's mind whirled. All this time, the humans I thought were fragile, weak. They are capable of courage, bravery, and compassion beyond what I imagined. She glanced at him again, this time more clearly seeing the man behind the memory. He was not just a human. He was someone who had risked his life for hers, someone who had acted out of pure humanity. And now he was here, standing in her palace, calm and unafraid, offering not just words but presence. Belrin noticed the shift in her expression and understood immediately. He gave a slight nod, indicating that the princess's reaction was genuine. Humans had a way of surprising even the most sophisticated Zitherans, but this was remarkable. Lysera finally spoke, her voice stronger now, though still tinged with awe. You were the one who saved me all those years ago." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I did not remember clearly, but now I do. I cannot believe you are here." Ethan smiled faintly, a mixture of humility and warmth. "It seems fate has its ways, Princess. Perhaps there is still much for us to learn from each other." The council exchanged glances, sensing the importance of this meeting. They had expected discussion of trade and alliances, but what was unfolding was far more personal and significant. Lysera's recognition of Ethan's past bravery had created a bond, a spark of understanding that no treaty could match. The human and the princess stood there, separated by time and memory, yet connected in a way that transcended their worlds. For Lysera, the realization was overwhelming. Humans were not as fragile or simple as Zitherans often believed. They were capable of courage, loyalty, and acts of pure heart. Ethan's presence reminded her of that truth in a way nothing else could. And as she looked into his eyes, she felt a strange shiver, not of fear but of shock and recognition, of awe at the bravery of someone who had risked everything for her life. The meeting concluded with formal pleasantries, but Lysera's mind was elsewhere. She walked back to her balcony after the council had left, gazing at the sky. The twin suns reflected on the crystal towers, and the memory of her childhood terror mixed with the courage of the human who had saved her. She shivered, both in shock and in awe, realizing that one small human had done what many Zitherans could not. For the first time in her life, she questioned what she knew about humans. They were not merely fragile outsiders. They were unpredictable. Yes, but their unpredictability included bravery, ingenuity, and an unyielding sense of right. And the human named Ethan, who now walked the halls of her palace, was living proof. Lysera knew one thing clearly as she stood there, lost in thought. Their story was only beginning. The sun had begun its slow descent, painting the skies of Zithera with shades of gold and crimson. The palace seemed calmer now, the bustling activity of the day quieting down. Princess Lysera walked through the gardens, her long silver hair glinting in the warm light. Her mind, however, was not calm. Ethan had been escorted to the palace quarters after the council meeting. Officially, he was to rest before formal talks began the next day. Unofficially, Lysera knew she could not ignore the strange mix of emotions he had stirred within her. She remembered the day he had saved her, but only fragments. And yet the memory was vivid enough to make her shiver. Lysera paused near a floating fountain, the water suspended in midair, spiraling like a ribbon of liquid light. She closed her eyes and allowed herself a moment of recollection. It was many years ago, during a rare human delegation visit to Zithera. Lysera had been a child then, no more than 7, exploring the palace gardens under the watchful eye of her caretakers. She was curious, as children often are, wandering farther than she should have. A sudden earthquake-like tremor shook the ground, and a crystal bridge beneath her began to crack. Panic gripped her tiny chest. The waters of the palace rivers roared below, and the winds seemed to pull at her hair and robes. She tried to call for help, but her voice was lost in the sudden chaos. Then, a human appeared, a young man full of determination, moving with speed and precision that defied what Lysera knew of her small universe. He scooped her up in his arms, leaping across the unstable ground, carefully navigating the crumbling path. He shielded her body with his own, risking himself as the ground trembled beneath them. Lysera had been too young to fully understand the courage it took, but she remembered the warmth of safety, the calm in his voice, and the reassurance that everything would be all right. And then he was gone, leaving only a memory, a gratitude she had carried quietly through her life. Lysera opened her eyes, the memory crystal clear now. The same man stood before her today, older, calmer, yet still exuding that bravery and kindness she had once known. Her chest tightened with a mixture of awe and confusion. She had always been taught that humans were clever but fragile. How could one human, so small compared to her people, have faced such danger without hesitation? The sound of footsteps behind her pulled her from her thoughts. She turned and saw Ethan, walking slowly along the path, hands behind his back. His presence was calm, yet it held a quiet strength that reminded her of the past. "Princess Lysera," he said gently, "I did not mean to intrude. I thought perhaps you might like to see the gardens in the evening light." Lysera hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, the gardens are beautiful. Please, walk with me." They strolled together, the silence between them comfortable yet charged with unspoken thoughts. Lysera watched Ethan as he admired the floating flowers, the rivers of light, and the delicate sculptures. His curiosity was genuine, not just as a visitor fulfilling his duties, but as someone who truly appreciated the world around him. "You remember, the day I saved you," Ethan said quietly, breaking the silence. Lysera glanced at him, startled. Yes, she admitted. "It was a long time ago, but I remember fragments. You risked your life for me. I never understood why." Ethan smiled faintly. "Because it was the right thing to do. You were in danger. I could not stand by and do nothing. Humans, we act on what we feel is right, sometimes without thinking of the consequences for ourselves." Lysera studied him. His honesty, his simplicity, yet his courage. It was unlike anything she had ever seen in her own people. Zitherans were cautious and strategic and deliberate. Their actions were always measured, always calculated. But Ethan's courage had been spontaneous, genuine. It had saved her life. "Why do you come now?" she asked softly. "Years have passed. You could have remained on your own planet, safe and distant. Why return?" Ethan's gaze met hers, unwavering. "Because I could not forget. And because perhaps, this time I can help not just you, but your world too. There are threats you may not see yet. Ones that cannot be handled by Zitherans alone." Lysera frowned slightly, sensing both caution and urgency in his words. "Threats? What kind of threats?" "I cannot explain everything now," he said, his voice steady. "But know this. Humans are capable of more than your people realize, and I have learned things in my travels. Things that could help Zithera prepare for what is coming." Lysera was silent for a moment, considering him. She remembered the bravery of her childhood, and she felt a stirring of respect. Perhaps humans were not as weak as her people believed. Perhaps there was something unique in their courage, a combination of heart and mind that Zitherans often overlooked. As they continued walking, Lysera found herself speaking more openly than she had in years. "I always wondered why you acted without fear," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Most would have hesitated. Most humans I have met since then. They would have run." Ethan shook his head. "Not all humans," he replied. "Some of us see danger and still act. Because in that moment fear is smaller than what is right. You taught me something too, Princess, even back then. You reminded me that life is precious, worth protecting no matter who we are." Lysera's eyes widened slightly. She had never thought of it that way. Could a human truly see the value in someone so different, so small, and act without hesitation? The thought made her shiver again, but this time with a sense of admiration rather than shock. They reached a secluded part of the garden, where soft glowing lights floated like fireflies above a serene pond. The water reflected the colors of the sky, the twin suns now nearing the horizon. Ethan stopped and looked at her. "Princess," he said, "I do not wish to impose, but I hope you understand that my presence here is not just political. I came because I remembered, because I wanted to ensure that the courage of that day was not in vain." Lysera's heart swelled. She felt emotions she had never expected to feel in the presence of a human: gratitude, trust, and a growing curiosity. She wanted to know more, to understand this human who had risked everything for her, who now stood before her with quiet strength and determination. I do understand," she said finally, "and I'm grateful, more than I can express." Ethan nodded, accepting her words without expectation. "Then perhaps we can learn from each other. Humans and Zitherans, together we can face what is ahead. If you are willing." Lysera considered him carefully. Her upbringing had taught caution, suspicion, and the need for control. But something within her, the memory of that long-ago day, the undeniable courage of this man, urged her to trust. "Yes," she said slowly, "I am willing. But you must understand, trust is not given lightly here, not even to humans who once saved a princess." Ethan smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "I do not expect it to be easy, but I am willing to earn it in whatever way I can." As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of purple and silver, Lysera felt a strange sense of hope. Perhaps humans were not the fragile outsiders she had been taught to think of them as. Perhaps their courage, their ingenuity, and their heart could truly make a difference. She glanced at Ethan once more. The human who had saved her as a child, the one who now walked calmly beside her in her palace gardens, was not just a visitor. He was a reminder of something powerful and rare, that courage and kindness could bridge worlds, and that the smallest acts could echo through a lifetime. The night air was cool, filled with the gentle hum of floating gardens and distant waterfalls. Lysera shivered again, not from fear, but from the realization that her world might be about to change in ways she had never imagined. And with that thought, she knew one thing for certain: her life, and perhaps the future of Zithera, was about to intertwine with that of a human named Ethan. The story was only beginning. The palace of Zithera slept under the soft light of twin moons, the gardens glowing faintly in hues of silver and blue. Princess Lysera could not rest. Even after walking with Ethan through the gardens and speaking of memories and trust, her mind was alive with thoughts. Humans, so small, so fragile by appearance, had a courage she had never imagined. She kept replaying the moment he had saved her as a child, and now the presence of that same human in her palace was both comforting and unsettling. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed through the halls. Lysera stiffened. It was not the usual hum of the palace or the distant murmur of servants. This was deliberate, mechanical, and urgent. Something was wrong. She turned toward the hall, her violet eyes wide. "Velryn," she called softly. "What is that sound?" The tall aide appeared instantly, his expression tense. "Princess, we are under attack," he said quietly. "Rogue factions from beyond the northern mountains have infiltrated the palace. They are targeting you." Lysera's heart raced. Her first instinct was fear, a natural reaction, though one she seldom allowed herself to feel. But then she saw Ethan step forward. His calm presence steadied her more than any guards could. "Princess," Ethan said, his voice low and steady, "stay close to me. I will help you through this." Lysera's mind flashed back to the memory she had struggled to recall, the human who had saved her as a child. That same bravery surged within him now. She nodded, her chest tightening with a mixture of awe and trust. The corridors of the palace were grand, but their beauty could not protect against sudden violence. Alarms blared, red lights casting long shadows across crystalline walls. Guards rushed past, readying their energy weapons, but the rogue attackers were swift, moving silently and efficiently. Ethan did not hesitate. He grabbed a small but advanced human device from his belt, a compact shield that could deflect energy blasts. He moved ahead, scanning the corridors for threats. Lysera followed, her steps careful but determined. "Stay behind me," Ethan instructed. "These attackers, They are skilled. We must be cautious. The first confrontation came swiftly. Two figures emerged from a side corridor, armed with plasma rifles. Without thinking, Ethan leaped to intercept them. He moved with precision and speed, dodging blasts and using his shield to protect both himself and Lysera. One attacker charged toward the princess, but Ethan blocked him, twisting and using the attacker's momentum to send him crashing into a wall. Lysera's breath caught. She had seen many guards in training, many warriors of Zithara, but none moved with the combination of bravery and cleverness that Ethan displayed. He was small compared to the Zitharans, but his intelligence, quick thinking, and courage made him formidable. The attackers regrouped, clearly realizing that a human was more than a simple obstacle. One of them aimed directly at Lysera, and for a moment she froze, terror gripping her chest. But before the shot could fire, Ethan acted. He threw himself between her and the attacker, using his shield to block the energy blast. The light from the blast reflected off his device, illuminating his determined expression. Lysera shivered, not from fear but from shock and awe. The human before her once again was risking himself to save her life. "Princess, move," Ethan commanded. "Follow me." She did, her trust in him complete. Together they navigated the twisting corridors, evading attackers and using secret passages known only to palace residents. Lysera marveled at his ability to adapt so quickly, using human ingenuity in ways the palace guards had never expected. They reached a side chamber, a secure room where the princess could take refuge if necessary. But Ethan paused, listening carefully at the door. "They are organized," he whispered. "More are coming. We need to protect the main hall. You must stay here while I hold them off." Lysera shook her head. "No," she said firmly. "I am not a child anymore. I can help. I must help." Ethan looked at her, admiration flickering in his green eyes. "Very well," he said. "But stay close and follow my instructions exactly." Together they emerged into the main hall where chaos had begun. Guards were fighting valiantly, but the attackers' numbers were overwhelming. Ethan quickly assessed the situation. He noticed the layout of the hall, the positioning of the attackers, and the weak points in their formation. "Princess, we can use the upper balconies," he said. "If we take the high ground, we can control their movements." "Can you climb?" Lysera's eyes widened. I can try." With careful guidance from Ethan, she moved quickly, climbing the sleek walls using handholds hidden in the architecture. The human moved beside her, almost impossibly agile for someone his size. Together they reached the balcony overlooking the main hall. From above, Ethan shouted instructions to the palace guards, directing them to focus on specific attackers. His voice was calm, authoritative, and the guards obeyed without hesitation. With strategy and clever placement, the tide of the battle began to turn. Lysera watched him, her heart pounding. Humans were small, yes, but their minds were sharp, their courage immense. Ethan's ability to think quickly, to inspire others, and to act decisively made her realize something important. Human bravery was not measured by size or strength, but by heart and intellect. The final wave of attackers approached, determined and furious. Ethan prepared his shield and Lysera steadied herself beside him. Together they charged down, moving through the hall with precision. Ethan used his shield to deflect blasts while Lysera, guided by his instructions, assisted the guards in securing entrances and protecting civilians. One attacker lunged directly at Lysera, and for a brief, terrifying moment she felt fear grip her entirely. But Ethan reacted instantly, pushing her out of harm's way and using a swift maneuver to disable the attacker. Lysera realized again with profound shock that this human, the one who had saved her long ago, was still willing to risk everything for her safety. When the last of the intruders were finally subdued, the hall was silent except for the soft hum of palace machinery and the heavy breathing of exhausted guards. Ethan stood beside Lysera, his shield dented but intact. He looked at her, his expression calm but serious. "Are you all right?" he asked. Lysera nodded, her hands trembling slightly. I am," she said, though her voice was filled with emotion. You saved me again. Just as you did before. How can one human do so much?" Ethan smiled faintly, a mixture of humility and warmth. "It is not about doing much," he said. "It is about doing what is right no matter the danger. Courage is not about size or strength, it is about heart." Lysera's eyes glistened. She had always believed in her own people's superiority, their elegance, their strategy, their strength. But now she realized something profound. Humans possessed a different kind of power, one that could match or even surpass the greatest of her people when combined with wisdom and courage. The palace was secure, but the attack had left its mark. Guards began repairing damages, and the princess escorted the wounded to safety. Lysira's thoughts, however, were not on the palace, but on the human who had saved her twice in one lifetime. She led Ethan to a private chamber, away from the bustle. You are incredible," she said softly. "Not just in skill, but in spirit. I had forgotten, or perhaps never truly realized, what humans are capable of. You make me reconsider everything I thought I knew." Ethan shrugged lightly, though a faint blush crossed his cheeks. "I do what I can," he said simply, "but I am glad it helped. Your safety is important to me, Princess." Lysira felt a warmth in her chest she had not expected. Gratitude, trust, and admiration mingled together, creating a bond she could not ignore. Humans were more than observers of the galaxy. They were participants, capable of acts that could change lives and even worlds. As she stood by the window, watching the twin moons reflect off the repaired crystal walls, Lysira shivered again. But this time, the shiver was not of fear but of awe and realization. The human before her, Ethan, was living proof that courage, ingenuity, and heart could bridge worlds. And as the night deepened, Lysira knew that the events of this day would forever alter her understanding of humans, bravery, and the possibilities of the universe. The story was far from over. Danger, discovery, and the unbreakable bond between princess and human lay ahead, and Lysira, for the first time in her life, felt both excitement and hope for the future. The palace of Zithara had returned to its quiet elegance after the unexpected attack. Crystals gleamed once more in the hallways. The gardens floated softly in the evening glow, and the palace guards patrolled diligently, vigilant but calm. Yet Princess Lysira could not ignore the echo of recent events. The memory of Ethan's bravery, the human who had once saved her as a child and now again lingered in her mind. Persistent and undeniable, Lysira found herself standing in the high garden balcony, gazing at the glowing rivers of light that curved through the city. The twin moons cast a silver shimmer over the floating fountains. She had always found solace here, but tonight her thoughts were restless. She had trusted humans in the past, but now she realized that one human in particular had changed her perception entirely. Ethan approached quietly, his steps soft on the crystal tiles. "You are awake late," he observed gently. Lysira turned, offering a small smile. "I could not sleep," she admitted. "I keep thinking about the attack. And about you. Again, you risked yourself for me. I do not know how to repay such courage." Ethan shook his head. "No repayment is necessary," he said simply. "I do what I can because it is right. That is enough for me." Lysira studied him, taking in his calm composure, his steady eyes, and the quiet strength he radiated. "Humans are remarkable," she said softly. "Not in the ways we are taught to think, but in ways that are extraordinary. You see things differently. You act differently. You care differently." Ethan smiled faintly. "We value life, Princess, and sometimes we act on instinct. Perhaps it seems strange to you, but it is the way we survive and help one another. We believe in courage even when it is dangerous, and in compassion, even when it is inconvenient." Lysira felt a shiver, not of fear but of awe and admiration. She had always thought of humans as small, fragile, and simple. But the human before her, Ethan, was anything but simple. His courage, ingenuity, and heart were qualities she had rarely seen among her own people. The next morning, Lysira and Ethan met in the palace council chamber. This time the atmosphere was calmer, but the tension of the previous day still lingered. The council had gathered to discuss the attack, security measures, and potential threats. Lysira stood at the center, her royal poise intact. Yet her mind was focused on one thing: understanding Ethan, and understanding humans better. "Princess Lysira," said Theron, the council leader, "we are grateful that the attack was stopped without serious harm. But the question remains, who orchestrated this and what is their purpose?" Ethan stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the council members. "I cannot claim to know all the details yet," he said, "but I have learned that these attacks are part of a larger plan. There are factions in the galaxy that seek to destabilize peaceful planets like Zithara. They underestimate humans and their allies. But they will find that courage and ingenuity are not easily defeated, the council murmured. Humans rarely spoke with such authority, yet Ethan's words carried weight. Lysira watched him closely, feeling a mix of pride and amazement. He had proven his bravery during the attack, and now his insight offered hope for the future. Lysira raised her hand. Ethan is right, she said firmly. The attackers were organized, and their methods suggest planning and intelligence. If we wish to protect Scythera, we must be prepared, not only with our strength, but with strategy and foresight. And humans. They have shown that they can be invaluable allies in this. A council member frowned. Princess, can we trust a human to guide our security measures? They are outsiders, after all. Lysira's eyes narrowed slightly, her voice steady. Perhaps. But trust is earned, not given lightly. Ethan has already proven himself, not just once, but twice. His courage saved my life, and his insight can save this planet. I choose to trust him. And I ask you all to consider his knowledge seriously. The council members hesitated, but Lysira's authority and conviction left little room for objection. Slowly, they began to nod, acknowledging the wisdom in her words. After the meeting, Lysira and Ethan walked through the palace gardens, now fully bathed in morning light. Birds with shimmering feathers flitted among floating flowers, and gentle breezes carried the scent of alien blossoms. For a moment, peace returned to the world, and Lysira allowed herself to breathe. I want to understand, she said softly. I want to understand humans and you. You were a stranger once, yet now you are part of my world. How do you see life, courage, and duty? Ethan considered her question carefully. Humans are not perfect, he admitted. We make mistakes, we sometimes act recklessly, and we fail. But we try. We try because life is precious and because we believe in doing what is right, even when it is dangerous. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action despite fear. Duty is not simply obeying orders. It is taking responsibility for those who cannot protect themselves. Lysira's eyes softened. She realized that humans, though small and seemingly fragile, possessed qualities that her own people often lacked. Scytherans were powerful, strategic, and disciplined, but sometimes they could forget the value of heart, intuition, and courage that came from genuine care for others. You inspire me, she said quietly. I thought courage was measured by strength, skill, and control, but you have taught me that courage can come from compassion and from the willingness to risk everything for what is right. Ethan smiled faintly. And you inspire me, Princess. You have faced challenges all your life, carried responsibilities few could bear, and yet you continue to act with wisdom and grace. Humans can learn from Scytherans just as Scytherans can learn from humans. Lysira felt a warmth in her chest, a growing bond with this human who had once saved her life and now walked beside her as an equal. She realized that trust was forming between them, not imposed by rank or duty, but by mutual respect, understanding, and shared experience. As days passed, Lysira and Ethan spent more time together, discussing security, the potential threats in the galaxy, and strategies to protect Scythera. Ethan introduced ideas that blended human ingenuity with Scytheran technology, creating defenses that were both clever and effective. Lysira observed closely, marveling at the human ability to think creatively under pressure, to adapt quickly, and to act decisively when necessary. One afternoon, as they reviewed the palace's defenses, a messenger arrived from the northern territories of Scythera. Reports had come in of unusual movements, ships moving without identification, scouts seen near the mountain passes. Lysira's violet eyes widened. It seems our threats are not over, she said quietly. They are testing us. Perhaps they are preparing for something larger. Ethan nodded. Yes, and we must be ready. The attack on the palace was only the beginning. If we wait until they strike again, it may be too late. We must act first using strategy, courage, and cooperation. Lysira felt a surge of determination. She was no longer a passive observer of her world's safety. She was an active participant, guided by a human who had shown her the true meaning of courage. That evening, Lysira invited Ethan to her private chambers. The sky was painted with shades of purple and gold, the twin moons rising in the distance. She wanted to speak openly without guards or council members to understand the human who had become both her protector and her teacher. Ethan, she began, you have changed the way I see humans. You have changed the way I see courage, loyalty, and action. But I want to know, Why you risked your life for me, not once, but twice. Why did you do it? Ethan met her gaze, his green eyes steady. Because it was the right thing to do, he said simply. I could not stand by while you were in danger. And because you mattered to me then, and you matter to me now. Life is precious, princess. And when I see someone in danger, I act. That is all there is to it. Lysra felt a shiver run through her, not of fear but of understanding and admiration. She realized that humans, though small and seemingly fragile, possessed a courage that could match and sometimes surpass even the greatest of her people. You are remarkable, Ethan, she said softly, and I trust you, not just because you saved me, but because I believe in what you stand for. Courage, compassion, and loyalty. These are qualities I value more than anything else. Ethan's lips curved in a faint smile. Thank you, princess. That means more than you know, and I trust you as well. Together we can face whatever comes. As they stood side by side watching the moons rise over the floating gardens, Lysra knew that a bond had been formed, one that transcended species, time, and memory. Humans were no longer outsiders to her world. They were allies, friends, and a source of inspiration. The galaxy was vast, and threats still lingered, but for the first time, Lysra felt hope, not just for her planet, but for the future where courage, heart, and collaboration could change the course of destiny. And with Ethan by her side, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The twin moons shone brightly over Zithera, casting long silver reflections across the floating gardens and crystal towers. Princess Lysra stood on her balcony overlooking the city, her violet eyes focused and determined. The days since the attack had been filled with preparation, strategy, and careful planning. The rogue factions that had threatened the palace were not finished, and reports now indicated that a larger force was assembling beyond the northern mountains. Lysra's mind was sharp, her focus unwavering. She had grown in courage and wisdom since meeting Ethan, the human who had once saved her as a child and now stood as her ally. His presence had changed her perception, not just of humans, but of what true bravery and loyalty could accomplish. Ethan arrived quietly behind her, moving with the same calm assurance that had impressed her since their first meeting. The northern forces are mobilizing faster than we expected, he said, his voice steady. If we wait for them to strike, the palace and the people may be at risk. We must act first. Lysra turned to face him. Then we act, she said firmly. We will not wait. Zithera will not be vulnerable, and I will not let anyone harm my people or you again. Ethan nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. Together, princess. We will face them together. The preparations were swift and precise. Ethan worked closely with the palace engineers, blending human ingenuity with Zitheran technology. Energy shields were reinforced, defensive turrets strategically positioned, and escape routes mapped for civilians. Lysra coordinated with her council and guards, ensuring that every detail was addressed. Despite the intensity of the preparations, Lysra found time to speak with Ethan. Humans act differently than Zitherans, she observed. You think quickly, adapt rapidly, and inspire courage without command. It is remarkable. Ethan shrugged lightly. We survive by being flexible, and we care deeply about those we protect. Courage is not just about fighting. It is about responsibility, loyalty, and heart. That is how humans thrive, princess. And perhaps that is why I have always acted without hesitation for you. Lysra felt warmth in her chest. She had witnessed bravery many times in her life, but Ethan's courage was different. It was quiet, personal, and unwavering. It was a courage that inspired trust and hope, not just fear or respect. The next morning, the sky above Zithera darkened as the rogue fleet approached. Ships of various shapes and sizes moved with precision, yet their numbers were overwhelming. The palace alarms sounded, and the people of Zithera braced for the attack. Lysra stood with Ethan on the main balcony of the palace, looking out at the advancing fleet. They are more prepared than we thought, she said softly, her voice steady. But we have courage, strategy, and unity. That will make the difference. Ethan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. And trust, princess. You trust humans. That trust gives us strength, just as your courage inspires others. Together we can turn the tide. Lysra nodded, taking a deep breath. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but she felt ready. She had faced danger before, guided by her instincts and her upbringing. But now she had something more, an ally whose courage matched her own, and a bond built on trust and shared experience. The battle began as the rogue fleet descended upon the palace. Energy beams lit up the sky, reflecting off crystal towers and floating gardens. The palace defense systems activated, firing turrets, deploying shields, and coordinating with the city's emergency response units. Ethan moved swiftly through the command center, directing defensive measures, predicting the attackers' movements, and guiding Zithran forces with strategy and precision. Lysera watched in awe, seeing the human think and act faster than any automated system or experienced officer could. "Princess," Ethan called, "we need to focus on the lead ships. If we take them out, the others will lose coordination." Lysera nodded and activated a specialized Zithran defense system, combining her energy control abilities with Ethan's strategic instructions. Together, they struck the lead ships, disabling their weapons and causing the fleet to falter. The rogue forces, realizing their plan was failing, tried to retreat, but Ethan had anticipated their moves. He directed the palace defenses with efficiency and ingenuity, using traps, energy barriers, and precise strikes to force the fleet into disarray. Amid the chaos, Lysera noticed a squad of rogue fighters attempting to infiltrate the palace itself, aiming directly for her chambers. Fear surged, but she did not falter. She ran to intercept them, guided by Ethan's instructions. Ethan followed closely, moving with agility and focus. Together, they confronted the intruders in the main hall. Lysera's energy manipulation and combat skill combined with Ethan's human ingenuity and quick thinking made them a formidable team. They moved with synchronization, covering each other's weaknesses and maximizing their strengths. Lysera struck with precision, disarming attackers and using her agility to protect the palace. Ethan blocked energy blasts, redirected enemies, and guided civilians to safety. The intruders were powerful, but together they were unstoppable. Finally, the last intruder fell, and the hall was silent except for the hum of palace energy systems. Lysera and Ethan stood side by side, breathing heavily but victorious. The people of Zithra emerged cautiously from their shelters, eyes wide with astonishment. They had witnessed the power of unity, courage, and unexpected collaboration. Humans had long been underestimated, but now one human had proven himself invaluable to the princess and the safety of the planet. Lysera stepped forward, her voice carrying across the hall. "People of Zithra," she said, "we have faced danger and we have prevailed. Not by strength alone, nor by fear, but by courage, trust, and collaboration. This human Ethan of Earth has shown bravery beyond measure. Let his actions remind us that courage is not limited to any one race or species. It exists wherever heart and will are strong." The crowd murmured, slowly realizing the truth in her words. Humans were no longer outsiders. They were capable of heroism, ingenuity, and loyalty that could inspire even the most advanced civilizations. Ethan bowed slightly, a humble gesture. "I did what I could," he said quietly. "But it is your courage and wisdom, Princess Lysera, that led us to victory." Lysera smiled, a mix of gratitude and respect in her eyes. "No, Ethan, it is both of us together. And perhaps this is only the beginning. There are still challenges ahead, but now I know that humans are not simply visitors in our galaxy. They are allies, friends, and protectors." In the following days, Lysera and Ethan worked together to strengthen Zithra's defenses further, sharing knowledge and strategies. Humans and Zithrans began collaborating in ways that had never been imagined, creating a bond between their worlds that would last for generations. Lysera's perspective had changed completely. She no longer saw humans as fragile outsiders, but as beings capable of courage, wisdom, and compassion. Ethan's actions had shown her that even the smallest individual could make a profound difference when guided by heart and intellect. One evening, as the sun set in hues of orange and violet, Lysera and Ethan walked together in the palace gardens, reflecting on all that had happened. "I never imagined a human could teach me so much," Lysera said softly. Ethan smiled. "And I never imagined I would find a world and a princess worth protecting so deeply. Courage, loyalty, and heart, they exist everywhere, Princess, even across the stars." Lysera paused, looking at the human who had saved her life twice and now stood as her closest ally. "Thank you, Ethan," she said quietly. "Not just for saving me, but for showing me the truth about courage, trust, and the power of the human spirit." Ethan's green eyes met hers, steady and sincere. "And thank you, Princess, for trusting me. for believing that we could face anything together. That is what makes us strong. As they walked through the glowing gardens, the city of Zythera around them serene and safe, Lysera felt a deep sense of hope. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknown threats and endless possibilities. But with courage, trust, and allies, human and Zytheran alike, anything was possible. And in that moment, Lysera knew the truth. Heroes were not defined by size, species, or power. They were defined by heart, bravery, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. Ethan had proven that humans were capable of greatness. Lysera had realized that together, they could face the stars and protect their worlds. And the story of courage, friendship, and trust would continue, not just on Zythera, but across the galaxy. The future was bright, and for the first time, Lysera felt certain that with humans as allies, no threat was too great, no challenge too impossible. And as she glanced at Ethan standing calmly beside her, she knew one more truth. Sometimes the smallest hands could make the biggest difference. The galaxy would never forget the day a human saved an alien princess, not once, but twice, and in doing so proved that courage, heart, and loyalty could transcend worlds.